July 5th, 1943. The sun rises over the Russian steppe, but something is wrong. The horizon doesn't glow orange, it glows red. Not from the dawn, but from the barrels of 6,000 tanks about to unleash the largest armored battle in human history. In the next 17 days, more firepower will be unleashed on a single battlefield than in all of World War I. The fate of Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, and perhaps the entire war hangs in the balance. This is the Battle of Kursk, the day the sun stood still. And by the time it's over, the course of human history will be changed forever. If you think you know everything about World War II, trust me, you don't know Kursk. So buckle up, hit that subscribe button, and let's jump into the inferno. To understand Kursk, we need to rewind 6 months. It's February 1943, and the German Sixth Army has just been annihilated at Stalingrad. Hitler's invincible Wehrmacht has suffered its first major defeat. The myth of German supremacy is shattered. Soviet forces are advancing, and for the first time since Operation Barbarossa began in 1941, the Germans are on the back foot. But here's the thing about the Eastern Front. It's not like the Western Front in World War I, with its endless trenches stretching from the sea to Switzerland. This is a war of movement, of vast distances, of fluid battle lines. And in the chaos following Stalingrad, something interesting happens on the map. A bulge forms in the Soviet lines, a salient jutting westward into German-held territory near the city of Kursk. To German military planners, this bulge is irresistible. It's like a target painted on a map, begging to be eliminated. The logic is simple. Attack from the north and south simultaneously, cut off the bulge, trap hundreds of thousands of Soviet soldiers, and in one brilliant stroke, regain the initiative in the east. Hitler is desperate for a victory. He needs to prove to his allies, to his generals, and to himself that Germany can still win this war. The operation gets a name. Unternehmen, Citadel. Operation Citadel. And on paper, it looks brilliant. The Germans will concentrate their newest, most powerful weapons. Tiger tanks with armor so thick, they're nearly invincible. Panther tanks with guns that can pierce Soviet armor from over a mile away. Ferdinand tank destroyers. Even experimental weapons that haven't been fully tested. This will be the German army's greatest armored spearhead, an unstoppable hammer that will smash through Soviet defenses and win the war in the East. There's just one problem. The Soviets know it's coming. And that's where this story gets really interesting. The Soviet intelligence network, including the famous Lucy spy ring in Switzerland, has penetrated German command so thoroughly that Stalin knows about Operation Citadel almost as soon as Hitler approves it. The Soviets know where the Germans will attack. They know when. They even know which units will spearhead the assault. So the Soviets do something unprecedented. They decide not to attack first. Instead, they're going to let the Germans come to them. They're going to turn the Kursk salient into the most heavily fortified position in military history. And then they're going to bleed the Wehrmacht white. Imagine you're a Soviet soldier in the spring of 1943. You've been ordered to dig, and dig, and dig some more. All across the Kursk salient, hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians are constructing defensive lines. Not just trenches, but entire defensive belts, one after another, stretching back over 100 miles. The numbers are staggering. The Soviets lay over 400,000 mines. They dig 3,000 miles of trenches. They construct thousands of gun emplacements, anti-tank positions, bunkers, and firing positions. They create 8 separate defensive lines, each one designed to slow, stop, and destroy the German advance. If the Germans break through one line, there's another waiting, and another, and another. Marshal Georgy Zhukov, the Soviet Union's greatest general, is orchestrating this defense. Zhukov is the man who saved Moscow in 1941, who helped plan the counteroffensive at Stalingrad. He's brilliant, ruthless, and he understands something crucial. The Germans are going to attack with their best troops and their best equipment. So let them. Let them exhaust themselves against these defenses. Let them blunt their spearhead on Soviet steel and concrete. And then, when they're weak, when they've shot their bolt, the Soviets will counterattack and drive them all the way back to Berlin. The Soviet forces at Kursk are massive, over 1.3 million men, 3,600 tanks, 20,000 artillery pieces, 2,400 aircraft, and they're not just sitting in trenches waiting. They're training, preparing, coordinating. Every soldier knows their role. Every tank commander knows where to position their vehicle for maximum effect. Every artillery battery has pre-planned firing coordinates. Meanwhile, the Germans are preparing too. But there's a problem. Hitler keeps delaying the offensive. He wants to wait for more of the new Panther tanks to arrive. He wants more Tigers, more men, more equipment. Each delay gives the Soviets more time to prepare. German generals are getting nervous. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, one of Germany's most skilled commanders, warns that the window of opportunity is closing. But Hitler is obsessed with having overwhelming force. He doesn't realize that overwhelming force means nothing if your enemy knows exactly where you're going to use it. July 5th, 1943. 3:30 a.m. The German artillery opens fire. Thousands of guns roar simultaneously, hurling shells into Soviet positions. The ground shakes. The sky lights up. The largest offensive operation Germany has launched since the invasion of the Soviet Union has begun. But here's where the Soviets pull their first surprise. They've detected the German preparations, and just before the German artillery fires, Soviet guns open up in a preemptive bombardment. They hit German assembly areas, catching troops and tanks before they can even begin their attack. It's not enough to stop the offensive, but it's a psychological blow. The Germans realize instantly that the element of surprise is gone. At dawn, the panzers roll forward. In the north, Model's 9th Army attacks with 900 tanks. In the south, Hoth's 4th Panzer Army and Army Detachment Kempf attack with over 1,500 tanks. This is mechanized warfare on a scale never before seen. Tigers lead the advance, their 88mm guns blasting apart Soviet T-34s. Panthers, despite mechanical problems plaguing the new design, prove deadly. The Germans are confident. They've done this before. They know how to win. But almost immediately, things start going wrong. The first defensive line slows them down, but they break through. The second line is tougher. By the end of the first day, the northern pincer under Model has advanced only 6 miles. The southern pincer under Hoth has done better, penetrating about 20 miles. But they're nowhere near breaking through. The Soviets are fighting differently. They're not breaking and running. They're trading space for German blood, making the Wehrmacht pay for every yard. The next few days become a grinding, attritional nightmare. German tanks hit minefields that destroy their tracks. Anti-tank guns positioned in well-camouflaged positions pick off tanks at close range. Soviet infantry with anti-tank rifles and explosive charges crawl close to disabled tanks and destroy them. German soldiers fight their way through one defensive line, exhausted, only to find another line just like it waiting behind. The Tigers and Panthers. Germany's superweapons are impressive but plagued with problems. Panthers break down constantly. Their engines overheat. Their transmissions fail. Tigers are nearly invincible from the front, but they're slow. They consume enormous amounts of fuel, and if you can hit one from the side or rear, it burns just like any other tank. And the Soviets have a secret weapon of their own. The T-34 tank might not be as powerful as a Tiger, but it's reliable. It's fast, and most importantly, there are thousands of them. For every T-34 destroyed, 2 more appear. The Germans are killing tanks at a phenomenal rate, but they can't kill them fast enough. July 12, 1943, near the town of Prokhorovka in the southern sector. This is the moment the Battle of Kursk reaches its crescendo. This is where legends are born. The Germans have pushed deep into the Soviet defenses. General Hoth's Panzer Corps is exhausted, but still dangerous. They've been fighting for a week straight, and they're tantalizingly close to breaking through the last major defensive line. If they can punch through here, they might still achieve their objective. But the Soviets have been waiting for this moment. Marshal Rotmistrov's 5th Guards Tank Army has been held in reserve, over 800 tanks, primarily T-34s, and they've been ordered to launch a massive counterattack. Not a careful, prepared attack, but an all-out charge directly at the German positions. Rotmistrov knows his tanks are outgunned by the German Tigers and Panthers. He knows that in a long-range gunnery duel, his forces will be slaughtered. So he's going to do something audacious. He's going to charge at maximum speed directly into close combat where the Germans' range advantage disappears. What happens next is the largest tank battle in history. Accounts vary wildly about the exact numbers, but somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 tanks clash in an area just a few miles across. Imagine that for a moment. Over 1,000 armored vehicles weighing tens of tons each, charging at each other at full speed across open fields. The Soviet tanks roar forward. German gunners fire. T-34s explode, brew up, their turrets flying through the air. But the survivors keep coming. The distance closes. 1,000 meters, 500 meters, 200 meters. Now the German advantage evaporates. At close range, a T-34 can penetrate a Panther's side armor. Soviet tanks are ramming German vehicles. Tank crews are bailing out and fighting with small arms. The battlefield becomes chaos, a swirling melee of steel and fire, where friend and enemy are sometimes separated by only a few meters. The fighting lasts all day. By evening, the battlefield is a graveyard of burned-out tanks. Hundreds of destroyed vehicles, both Soviet and German, litter the landscape. The official Soviet history claims a great victory, saying they destroyed hundreds of German tanks. Modern historians are more skeptical. The truth is that both sides suffered enormous losses. But here's what matters. The German advance is stopped. The southern pincer has been blunted. It can go no farther. In the north, Model's attack has already stalled days earlier, unable to break through the deep Soviet defenses. The pincers that were supposed to meet and cut off the salient are still hundreds of miles apart. Operation Citadel has failed. Hitler makes the decision on July 13th. He calls off the offensive. His reasons are partly military, but there's another factor. The Western Allies have just invaded Sicily. Italy is collapsing. He needs to send troops west. But the real reason is simpler. Operation Citadel has achieved nothing except to burn through Germany's strategic reserve of tanks and trained soldiers. The Wehrmacht has suffered casualties it cannot replace. The Soviets have suffered far worse in absolute numbers, but they can replace their losses. Germany cannot, and now it's the Soviets' turn. The defensive phase of Kursk is over. On July 12th, even as Prokhorovka rages, Soviet forces launch Operation Kutuzov, a massive counteroffensive against the German positions around Orel, north of Kursk. On August 3rd, they launch Operation Polkovodets-Rumyantsev against German positions to the south. These aren't limited counterattacks. These are huge offensive operations involving millions of men. The German army, exhausted and weakened from Citadel, cannot hold. They fight desperate defensive battles, but they're being pushed back. Cities fall. Territory is liberated. The battle lines that had been static for months are suddenly fluid again, but this time it's the Soviets advancing and the Germans retreating. By August 23rd, when the Battle of Kursk is officially considered over, the Germans have been pushed back to positions they held before the spring. The Soviets have liberated Orel, Belgorod, and most significantly, Kharkov, the fourth largest city in the Soviet Union. The psychological impact is enormous. The invincible Wehrmacht has not only failed in its great offensive, it has been driven back in defeat. The casualties are staggering. The Soviets lose somewhere between 250,000 and 320,000 men killed or missing, with total casualties reaching over 800,000. They lose over 6,000 tanks. These numbers are horrific, but the Germans lose between 50,000 and 70,000 men killed, with total casualties around 200,000. They lose over 1,500 tanks and nearly 1,000 aircraft. For the Soviet Union, with its vast population and increasing industrial output, these losses can be replaced. For Germany, they cannot. So why does Kursk matter? Why is this battle, which many people have never heard of, one of the most important of World War II? Because Kursk is the moment when Germany irrevocably loses the war in the East. Before Kursk, despite Stalingrad, there's still a theoretical possibility that Germany could stabilize the Eastern Front, negotiate some kind of settlement, or at least hold its positions. After Kursk, that possibility is gone. The initiative passes permanently to the Soviet Union. From this point forward, the Red Army will be on the offensive, driving westward, and nothing will stop them until they reach Berlin. Kursk demonstrates that Soviet intelligence, Soviet planning, and Soviet operational art have matured. They're no longer the disorganized force that was nearly destroyed in 1941. They've learned from their mistakes. They've adapted. They've become formidable. The Soviet generals who will finish the war, men like Zhukov, Konev, and Rokossovsky, have been tempered in the fire of the Eastern Front. They're now among the most skilled commanders in the world. The battle also reveals the limits of German technology. The Tigers and Panthers are impressive machines, but they're complex, unreliable, and expensive. Germany can't produce enough of them to matter. Meanwhile, Soviet factories are churning out T-34s by the thousands. It's a lesson in industrial warfare. The side that can build more, faster, and keep them running wins. Quality matters, but quantity has a quality all its own. Finally, Kursk is a turning point in global perception. After Kursk, everyone knows Germany is going to lose. The question is no longer if, but when. Neutral countries start hedging their bets. German allies start looking for exits. The entire strategic situation of the war has shifted. The Battle of Kursk lasted 49 days from start to finish. In that time, over 2 million men fought across a front hundreds of miles wide. More tanks fought at Kursk than have fought in all battles since. The amount of ammunition expended, the tonnage of explosives detonated, the sheer scale of destruction is almost incomprehensible. When soldiers who fought at Kursk were interviewed years later, they struggled to put it into words. The constant thunder of artillery that went on for days, the columns of smoke rising from burning tanks, stretching to the horizon. The ground so torn up by shell fire that it looked like the surface of the moon. The smell of burning fuel, explosives, and death that hung over everything. The title of this video calls it "The Day the Sun Stood Still." That comes from accounts of soldiers who said the smoke from the battle was so thick, so omnipresent that the sun was blocked out. Day became twilight. The sky glowed red not from sunrise or sunset, but from thousands of fires. The world seemed to pause, holding its breath as two titanic forces collided and the fate of nations hung in the balance. When the smoke finally cleared, the world had changed. The Wehrmacht would never again launch a major offensive in the east. The Red Army would never again be on the defensive. The road to Berlin was open, and nothing would stop the Soviets from walking it. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most crucial moments. Drop a comment below and let me know what battle you want me to cover next. And remember, history isn't just dates and facts. It's the story of real people facing impossible choices in unimaginable circumstances. The Battle of Kursk is one of those stories. The day the sun stood still and the world changed forever. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.